Hi, guys. Today we have Kevin J. Anderson, renowned and revered author, mentor, and my friend. He's crashing Keystroke Medium, and we're going to discuss everything from his new book release to the skinny on authors conquering Kickstarter, and he is among them. That's right, folks. Today is an AMA of epic proportions. You don't want to miss it, so please, if you're here live, go ahead and pop your questions into the chat as you think of them, and we'll put them up on the screen and we'll answer them because Kevin's here. So welcome, everyone. Hi.
Yay! Hi, guys. Good to see you again.
How's
You
everyone?
As well?
Yes. And Kalene, love your hair.
Thank you. I chopped it all off.
Wow, you did that?
It was here, and now it's here.
Nice.
Yeah,
so that's what you've been up to. Anything else in the editor world, the writing world that you've been doing, Kalene?
Well, I have an idea for a new series that I've been percolating on for about a month now. It's mostly ideas. I'm getting into the characters now, trying to figure out what kind of story they're going to be in. And then I had a brain blast, and I just vomited it out, beat sentences of 2 books worth of storylines. So now I'm kind of going through those and figuring out the in-betweens and if any of it's really going to stay, because, it could end up being completely different. But the biggest thing for me this last week, I worked myself into burnout, and I knew I was. I've been fighting it for about 9 months now. And I would be sitting at my desk editing, and I'd be like this, perfectly awake, fine. And then all of a sudden I would wake up. I don't even remember falling asleep. I would just wake up, 5 minutes, an hour later. So Rhett told me to take a vacation. So I've been taking it easier this week. Not getting just 4 hours of sleep, actually trying to get 6 or 7. So I'm doing better on that front. So yeah, everyone out there, pay attention to your health. Don't do what Kalene did and work yourself into burnout, because it takes a lot longer to get out of it than it does to take, half an hour, a couple hours to relax and get a full night's sleep. So.
Well, I've seen movies about that. It's not really just sleep. You're being abducted and you're losing time, and there's stuff going on in those missing hours. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. My gosh, I could be some weird assassin thing, secret alien assassin. And it's just now it's starting to take over because it's fully encompassed my brain. It's almost there. Sorry, guys. I love that. Someone write that.
Yeah. I've been doing some stepping back too, and just refocusing on family and friends, and my editing and my work, and that's been great. But I've noticed my productivity is dropping with my writing. Kevin, how do you do it? You have written so many books. I think you've sold, is it over 1 million copies?
Oh, I'm at 24 million copies.
Lord, man. He's dude.
24 million. I knew there's 1 million in there.
Yeah, 175 different titles. And it's funny because this all kind of ties together with everything we're going to be talking about. But just a few weeks ago in Provo, Utah, the Life, the Universe, and Everything conference I was at. I love that conference. I've been there a bunch of times. And I actually had a chance to sit down and chat with Brandon Sanderson. We had a table. We just kind of sat and talked. And because I've known him since before his first book was published. And he just said, so Kevin, what are you doing? What's new in Kevin world? And I said, Brandon, I'm really trying to slow down. I work too hard. I've always got a million things going. And I'm trying to find ways to throttle back a little bit. And Brandon just laughed and he said, Kevin, you have been telling me that for the past 17 years. And I have. Rebecca, my wife, even just laughs when I say, as soon as this project is finished, I can slow down. And it never happens. But, the way I do it, your question, Lauren, the way I do it is that I really love what I'm doing. I mean, I can't think of when, we have the in-laws and they go, Kevin, you work too hard. Just relax and sit with the family and play card games all afternoon. I'm going, that's not relaxing at all. That sounds like the worst thing I can imagine. I would way rather
a million things going through your head,
writing and doing things. So, that is part of it, that I really do enjoy the stuff that I'm doing, and it's exciting. I mean, I've got like some film and TV stuff going, and I've got comic books coming out, and you know, I have never lost that inner fanboy, the little kid in Wisconsin that grew up reading comic books and watching monster movies, and just wanting to, you know, some of your people might remember the old pulp hero Doc Savage, and Doc Savage was, he was like this self-made man. He was the most intelligent person in the world, and he worked out in the gym 4 hours a day. So he was like super strong. He was built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he had a brain like Stephen Hawking because he just studied everything, and he worked out, and he ate healthy, and he made himself into this superhero. And I read those books, and I went, well, I can be Doc Savage. Well, I couldn't, because I was this little beanpole nerdy wimpy kid, so I never got bulked up. But I did, you know, read a lot of stuff and learn a lot of stuff. So I'm having a blast doing it. It's if I were writing, you know, computer technical manuals or something, I probably wouldn't be working that many hours. But in Kalene's defense, I do get 6 to 7 hours of sleep a night, which that's all my body wants. I mean, I go to bed at midnight and I get up at 6:30 ish, and that's as much as my body wants, and I feel good.
Yeah, I have discovered I'm pretty good about 5 hours, but through everything I've needed to get a bit more because I'm basically running on empty. Anyway.
Einstein used to take naps for inspiration. When he got stuck on a project, a problem, he would take a metal ball in his hand and he'd hold it and then take a nap. And then when his hand relaxed, the ball would fall and it would wake him up and he'd know the answer. Not
a good way to get REM sleep, but
no. But maybe those little power naps have, you know, a little power in them. Jeff says, I feel you, Kevin. Love creating the worlds. And it sounds like love is what kind of powers your writing and your story creation.
Yeah. Well, I want to see what happens. I mean, I take what Kalene was talking about, vomiting all these stories down. That's the fun part, when it's just like you're plotting the whole novel and you're going, well, I know I got that this has to happen in this, and I've got some points, but it's like you're throwing all the possibilities in there and you're turning your characters loose. And it's like one of those, remember those games that had a bunch of metal pins in them and you would drop little ball bearings and they would bounce down, and sooner or later.
Those are so fun. Yeah. I used to have like a little.
Yeah, so that's kind of what plotting is for me, that I throw all the ball bearings in the top and I know a bunch of the pins in the middle and they're just bouncing all over the place, and then they come out in the end.
Yeah, that was a fun hour for me, because it's been a little minute since I've been able to just let myself do that. And it was just like, ooh, this thing, and jump down here and back up here and over here and vomit all this. And yeah, so I love doing that.
Well, and also, I mean, we've talked about this my other times on the show, is that I live in Colorado. I love to go hiking. In fact, all next week, I've been counting down the days. I've got a week to myself in the Canyonlands of southern Utah, the Canyonlands National Park and Arches, one of my favorite places on earth. I got all these hikes planned, and that's how I do my work. I have my little digital recorder here. See, the last file was 11 minutes and 10 seconds long. I'll just go out walking, and I mean, I'll dictate finished prose. I'll dictate the sentences and things. But if I'm just at the start of a project, it's like a space opera. So I'll go out and going, well, I've got these planets and these characters, and what do we do? And I'll just like brainstorm with myself. And you get more energy and creativity when you have physical activity. So if you're doing something, if you're walking, if you're swimming or whatever, that's when the ideas come. And so I will go out, and it snowed yesterday. So I literally went out, put on my snow boots, and I trudged around in the snow as it's like blizzarding around me as I'm plotting this AI Judgment Day apocalypse science fiction story that I'm going to write next week. So I just love with my recorder, and I walk along and I climb mountains and I go through forests and I see waterfalls and climb the sand dunes, and that's better inspiration than anything I can imagine.
So for our viewers who aren't familiar with your stories yet, what are some of the books that you've written or some of the series that you've written out and about in nature with your recorder?
Well, one of the first one, I've done about 54 different Star Wars books. That's what started in the 90s when I was writing Star Wars books. And I was doing some scenes on like the polar ice caps of Coruscant when I was hiking through the snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and just being out in the snow while I was describing like Hoth or these polar ice caps. It seemed great. Or I would be hiking in the Great Sand Dunes National Park or out in Death Valley, and I'd be writing about Tatooine or the planet Dune, because that's another one of my big series. I write all the new Dune books with Brian Herbert. There was, somebody may have heard of it, there's a little movie that came out last fall called Dune.
You know.
So going around in the environment and just seeing things, but I've done Dune and Star Wars and X-Files and Batman and Superman and Star Trek and a bunch of movie tie-ins, but I've got a big kind of expanse-like science fiction series called The Saga of Seven Sons. Right now, the one that just came out in January, the third book, is a huge epic fantasy called Spine of the Dragon and Venge War and Gods and Dragons. They're big, fat, complicated epics. And I like to say it's like Game of Thrones, only finished. They're all three done and they're all three out. And then just for real fun, and we'll talk about this more later because I've got a big Kickstarter going on it. But I have this really hilarious, fun, there's Lauren, Spine of the Dragon. And I've got this great series called about Dan Shamble, Zombie PI, which is kind of like the Rockford Files meets the Addams Family. It's a zombie detective. He's a Sam Spade gumshoe kind of guy, but he's got solving crimes with werewolves and ghosts and mummies and vampires, and it's just zany and stupid and funny, and it's a great break to just do comedy. And I tell stupid jokes, and I have.
Well, you had me at Addams Family, so you know.
So Addams Family or the Munsters? I guess Addams Family is the only one that's really kept on. But when I was a kid, I used to watch the Munsters and thought.
Nope, that one too. Yes.
Well, I mean, the Munsters was even. Addams Family was a little more sophisticated, but I was a kid, so I didn't notice the difference, I guess. But what I loved about the Munsters is that there were monsters living on the street. It was, Herman Munster looked like the Frankenstein monster, and his wife was like a bride of Dracula, and her father, Grandpa Munster, was like Dracula, but it was so funny because there were these horrific monsters, and they were just like living in a normal neighborhood, and everybody else thought that they were weird, but they didn't know what was weird about them. And they had a dragon named Spot that they kept in a dungeon, and little Eddie Munster, their kid, was a werewolf, and but they had a cousin, Marilyn, who was a perfectly normal young woman, and she thought there was something wrong with her because she didn't look.
She wasn't a monster.
Anyway, that kind of affected me as a kid, and it was stupid humor, and Herman Munster was very funny, and so I grew up, loving the old Universal monster movies, but I've written so many serious things and big epic. Dune is pretty serious, and Spine of the Dragon's got some really, really tough stuff in it. So sometimes you just want to tell a stupid zombie joke, and my tagline is, "You'll laugh so hard, brains will come out your nose."
And that's like your snarky series too, but you're also self-publishing it. Does self-publishing give you some like writer's freedom, creative freedom to make the jokes you want, to take the story in new places that you might have to like rein yourself back a little bit otherwise with a traditional publisher?
I never really reined myself in with it, but the Kensington Books published the first 4 novels in the Dan Shamble series, and they came out. But they're like 70,000 words. They're fast. They're really funny. You read them in like 1 or 2 sittings, and you love them. And I'm a fast writer, as you know.
Yeah.
And I talked with Jim Butcher and with Patricia Briggs and with Sherilyn Kenyon and with Kelly Armstrong and all these people who have these hugely successful, fun urban fantasy series. And they all said, every one of them said, that it took until like book 5 or 6 before they really got enough momentum behind them and they took off. Because readers kind of want to binge the series. They want to grab the stack and just go all the way through them. And Kensington, they did the first 3, and we were arguing about how they would do the release. And I didn't agree with what their plan was, but they're the publishers. And then they were, I'm going to kind of go all over the place here, but their ebooks, they priced the ebooks, no, the paperbacks, the trade paperbacks were $15, which is a perfectly normal price. They charged $15 for the ebook because they didn't want to compete with the sales in the print books.
But they're different readers.
Oh, it's a different reader. But the other thing was, and so they said that the ebook sales were disappointing and they weren't sure they wanted to continue it. But I talked them doing the 4th book in the series, and they paid me less for it, and it was sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the thing was, like I said, these are fast and they're funny and they're hilarious, and you read one and then you want the next one. And I was writing them fast. And I said, look, what we really need to do is bring these books out like 3 a year. Every 4 months, you have a new Dan Shamble book out. And they fought and complained and no, we can only bring them out 1 a year. And I said, 1 a year is not enough. And so they didn't continue the series. So then I published a bunch of short stories, and then I wrote a new book that Wordfire, my own publishing house, Wordfire Press, published. And then I did another short story series collection. And then I got all the rights back, so we reissued all of them. But see, the thing is that I can reissue them as fast as I want to now because they're mine. Mm-hmm. Now, this is going to sound completely not intuitive because I kept busy. And now it's been 5 years since the last Dan Shamble book because I had those 7 were out and I couldn't find time for it. And finally, I wanted to get back there. I wanted to, I really wanted to get back into this universe because like everybody, I've had a really tough couple of years. I've lost so many friends. My son died. My dad died. One of my best friends died. This year, January, I lost 5 publishing friends in 6 weeks. And it was like, I need something really light and funny and enjoyable. And this is the most fun that I have writing is doing the Dan Shamble stuff. And so leading right into what you mentioned. So instead of just writing a book and then putting out there, I decided I wanted to do a Kickstarter on the new Dan Shamble book because I also wanted to put in, redo all of the covers for the first 7 books. And I wanted to relaunch the whole thing. I needed new cover art, new design, everything. And so I'm planning to do this as a Kickstarter, and I had to find time to write the book because I wanted at least the first draft of the novel done before I started the Kickstarter, because anybody who's ever supported one knows how disappointing it is when the person flakes and just never gets it done. So mine's at least the draft is done before I started it. And then some guy named Brandon Sanderson kind of stole the limelight by putting a Kickstarter. I mean, I'm putting mine together. This wasn't inspired because of Brandon's. I was putting mine together. But actually, it's a very good thing because what he did is he showed everybody that Kickstarter is a real viable option, that it's not just for pathetic, starving artists saying, give me a bologna sandwich so I can live. That's not what it's about. It's more of a fan interaction. See, in old publishing, the publisher would give me in advance that they would calculate based on what they think the book is going to sell, and that's what I use to live on while I write the book, and then they publish it. Well, in Kickstarter, it's basically your fans are giving you the advance. Mm-hmm. If 100 of them want to pay you for the book ahead of time, well, then they're showing their support. And if 1,000 of them want to pay you ahead of time, then you have 1,000 people who want to read the book, and then they get it months before it's out to the general public. Brandon happens to have a couple 100,000 people who wanted to give him money, and that's wonderful. He's been building this for years and years and years. This is not an accident. This is something that he's been working on, building up his fan base, building up his support crew, building up his staff, his minions, he calls them, Dragon Steel Entertainment. He has turned this, today, just before this show, his Kickstarter broke 30 million.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
I mean, that's history.
Yeah.
But he broke Kickstarter. I think it was at 21 million when he became the largest Kickstarter ever, and now he's at 30, and he's still got, I forgot how many.
It's gonna get bigger.
Well, I mean, it slows down after a while. So my being an optimistic writer, my goal is I want to try to beat Brandon. So we'll try to get bigger.
There you go.
I'm not sure I can do that, but you got to be unrealistic.
Them stretch goals, man. You need them stretch goals.
Yes, Corey says a 20-year overnight success. That used to be one of my talks. 20 overnight success in 20 years or less, and it's a long.
I heard that one.
It's a long-standing thing. I mean, if you want to be successful as a writer, you don't come in and go, well, I've written stories for a month, and how come I'm not supporting myself yet? Well, that's not what happens. So
it's not how it works.
In this for the long haul. So anyway, you're going to show up the link to my Kickstarter so that we can beat Brandon.
There you go.
That's my hilarious. Let's beat Brandon. It's not going to happen, but.
And for everyone, Lauren dropped that link to Anderson, Kevin's, good Lord, all my words died, to his Kickstarter. If you want to go and either check it out, if you want to support, it'll also be in the show notes by our very own name. Just totally eluded me.
You need to get more sleep, Kalene.
I do. No, I am still like seriously, like I am like just at the beginning of healing myself. So I've got my coffee. I'm going to be wired up beyond what I need to be. But before I forget, there was one thing I wanted to say when you were talking about you just needed something fun to write. That is another kind of self health. You know, it's like for even if you're writing a bunch of fun stuff, like you need a break from the fun stuff. You want to write something more serious. It's nice to break out of the norm and push yourself in different ways and give your brain that, you know, a vacation. And I like that. And the publishing company definitely shot themselves in their foot for not reading the room, essentially.
Well, but see this is the kind of Dan Shamble is the kind of series where you really just want a whole bunch of them so that you can go through it like a big bag or big bowl of popcorn. I mean, it's not like The Catcher in the Rye, and it's not like James Joyce Ulysses. This is like I said, it's the Munsters and the Rockford Files and stuff like that. So you want to read it and it's a blast and you enjoy it. Actually one of the fun things is that for one of the Kickstarter goals, remember I told you that I do everything with the there it is, that one, the recorder there. And I'm writing, I have it all plotted. I have everything outlined. So I know chapter 1 is this and chapter 2 is that. But, you know, the actual writing of it and the character dialogue and the jokes and stuff, that all happens while I'm writing it or while I'm out walking. And so for one of the Kickstarter goals, I'm actually putting up, I will give you all of my original audio dictation files. So it's me writing it off the top of my head, laughing at some stupid joke that I thought up on the fly, and doing the voices of the characters as I'm writing them. And but also you're going to hear like the wind, and you hear me crunching through the snow. And there's a couple of chapters where it's a little bit muffled because I have a balaclava on because it was 4 degrees Fahrenheit outside with a wind chill of -20.
Good Lord,
I was out there. I had
dedicated.
Four hand warmers in my gloves and a balaclava over it, and I'm out like crunching through the snow, and I'm just laughing away. But it was cold. I had thermal underwear on and everything. So anyway, at the $100 reward level, you get all chapter by chapter, every single one of me basically writing the book in front of you while I'm dictating.
Honestly, I love that that's one of your stretch goals, because when I very first started writing my very first book, a huge minute of years ago, I had this thought, and I wanted to keep all of my, because I did longhand for the longest time. Everything was longhand. I'd type it up, I'd print it out, I would do all the edits by hand in different colored pens, and then I'd retype it in and reprint it. Yeah. So I'm like, I should keep all of these, because when I keep on writing books and I start getting super fans, they're going to want like these hand done rough drafts from my very first book that's total crap, but that's okay because they love everything that I do now, and I still have some of it. But I love that that's one of your stretch goals, because that was one of my things in the back of my head. It's like, one day if I become famous, someone's going to want to buy this.
Well, actually, it's one of the reward things you can pick. The stretch goal, we actually just, when we hit $10,000, it's a similar thing. So I've actually got a connection to a professional recording studio. And now that we hit the $10,000 stretch goal, I will be going into the studio and professionally recording the actual audiobook. I'll be narrating it.
Ooh.
And so, because we got to that funding level, so I'll be doing the actual one. And I know the voices, and we've had a couple of other audio narrators that just didn't get the jokes that they were reading, or the timing wasn't right. And it's very frustrating to me, because I'm going, no, that was funny. And so I'll do that myself now that we've hit our level, and we'll get that set up in there. So I just kind of like to have my hands in everything. I want to know how to do every bit of. Now, if we were back in like 1993, that's when I actually had the most fun as a writer, because all I did was write. I just wrote, sent it off. I didn't have to self-publish. I didn't really have to do any marketing. I didn't have to do any traveling. And I enjoy traveling, but it was just, all I did was I wrote a book and I sent it in. They'd send me another contract. I'd write another book and send it in. And that was a blast. But, I liked VHS videotapes too, and they're gone. Actually, I didn't like them very much, but you know what I mean? There's no use whining about it. That's not the way the real world is anymore. So you either evolve or not. And that's one of the things I posted, because there's always these arguments about Brandon and his success. And I said, Brandon is a game changer for entrepreneur authors. There are authors who just won't change and don't know how to change. And this isn't doing what Brandon did. Nobody can do what he did. I mean, I can maybe think of 2 or 3 other writers at all total who could do what he did, because and he's got to print these hundreds of thousands of books and distribute them and all that stuff. That's a full-on operation. It's not, somebody said that George Martin could do that. Well, George Martin has the readers, but George doesn't want to run a publishing company and get 300 people fulfilling his orders and designing the books and all that. I mean, I know George. I'm positive he doesn't want to do that. I think he likes doing the movie and TV stuff, working on it. But that's just what everybody should do. If you're the writer that really you don't want to do anything else but write and then let it go, well, then you should be with traditional publishing.
Well, and you also sound like Brandon right now, because COVID, knocked out his traveling plan, so he was able to take that time to write. And he's using Kickstarter to give the audience what they want. They want more good stories, and your audience wants more of Dan Shamble's, wants it fast. And it sounds like Kickstarter is your avenue for getting your readers what they want right away.
Yeah. Well, and they're going to be there, and it just kind of is, to me, I want to write it anyway, and this is sort of a way. Remember, I have to make a living at this. This is, and I'm not whining that I need donations or anything, but when I'm spending my time writing a novel, I want it to sell somewhere. And I've got comic scripts I'm doing, and I'm working on the next Dune movie and TV shows and all kinds of things. But, this is one of my loves, is this character, and he's just so much fun. And I have it gives me a kick to be able to go out and just come up with some stupid joke. And, how many zombies does it take to shingle a roof? Depends on how thinly you slice them.
Wow.
I'll have to tell my daughter that. She's going to like that one.
What does a zombie eat for breakfast? Grains.
Oh.
What does a Scottish zombie want? Bairns.
Oh.
And we'll stop there. But they're
those are good.
Well, they're not good, but they're
well, it's good in a corny kind of way. Like, You know, it's like, oh god, it's so ugly, it's adorable. You know,
It's punishment.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. Well, speaking of punishment, I don't know. That's not a segue. All right, Kalene, for our spotlight, we happen to have the new Dan Shamble's book.
we
in the
do.
spotlight. It's from
I've
the
not practiced
Kickstarter.
this.
I'll pop that back in the chats if anyone wants to see it for themselves.
Alrighty,
This is
so
neat.
we're gonna get a non-practiced, very off-the-cuff read of today's spotlight. Double booked, book 8 in the Dan Shamble Zombie PI series by Kevin J. Anderson. And this, just so y'all, in case anyone wasn't listening, Kevin's Kickstarter project. Dan Shamble. There we go. In the unnatural quarter, the plot thickens and then runs uncontrollably. When Howard Phillips Publishing announces the 12+1 anniversary edition due to unavoidable production delays of the famed Necronomicon, yes, I did it, the very book that caused the big uneasy in the first place, it takes zombie PI Dan Shamble.
Yep. You know what? I'll read it. I'm going to do this dramatic reading myself. I got it right in front of me.
Oh, okay. Never mind. So Kevin is kicking me off because he wants to do it himself. So
I want to do it myself so that you can hear what you're going to get if you get these raw audio files. All right. So
there you go. All right, Kevin, kicking me off. Take it away.
In the unnatural quarter, the plot thickens and then runs uncontrollably. When Howard Phillips Publishing announces the 12+1 anniversary edition, due to unavoidable production delays, of the famed Necronomicon, the very book that caused the big uneasy in the first place, it takes zombie PI Dan Shamble, aka Shamble, to root out the diabolical schemes surrounding the book and the fanatics who wish to destroy it. With enough plot twists to confound a professional contortionist, Dan Shamble doesn't have time for light reading. Along with his ghost girlfriend Cheyenne, his firebrand lawyer partner Robin, his best human friend Officer Toby McGowan, and his ultra-cute vampire half-daughter Alvina, Dan faces an unnatural caseload. Entire neighborhoods in the quarter have simply vanished into thin air. Rogue werewolf cop Harry struggles to write and market his memoir. Customer complaints turn monstrous over an auto mechanic shop run by gremlins, to whom repair is a foreign concept. And when unnatural doppelgangers appear in the shadowed streets, it does not mean double the fun. Entangled in it all is the mousy virgin librarian, now turned superstar celebrity, whose blood sacrifice, through an accidental paper cut, brought back all the monsters 13 years ago. That anniversary is indeed an unlucky number. There we go.
Yay! That's good. I love the Harry Dresden type books, so this is like right up my alley. You know, the unnatural coming into our world.
Gun. This is the Naked Gun. It's just space balls and just really, really stupid stuff. So
yeah, you're dialing it up on the humor. I can tell.
Well, he's back from the dead and back on the case, and you know, and there's just some of the one of the very first the very first Dan Shamble book called Death Warmed Over. He goes into a bar where he hangs out. It's called the Goblin's Tavern, and that's where he and his best friend, another cop, they hang out and they just drink beer. And there are 3 zombie cougars in there trying to pick him up. 3 old zombie ladies who are just trying to pick up Dan Shamble. But he rebuffs their advances, and they are afraid that he's got to get the joke right. So they go. He says he's not in the market, and they go, well, but you're dead, right? You're a zombie. And he says, yes. And they go, and you're a detective, right? And he says, yes. And she says, well, doesn't that make you a stiff dick?
Oh.
Sorry, kids.
Yeah,
that's where we are. So
that's funny.
Aaron says, during these times, we all need the light, witty humor of Dan Shambles.
Well, and I think, you know, I'm not known for being like cornball humor, but this one is what it is, so I enjoy it. I'm looking in the comments. I want to say, kind of back to the Kickstarter stuff. Jeffrey Haskell makes this really cool point about George Martin probably not being able to do what Brandon Sanderson did, because Brandon has proved so many times that he's going to deliver what he says he's going to deliver. And George Martin has got people waiting, what is it now, 12 years for the next Game of Thrones book. And they've just like, I'm not going to, if George Martin said, I'm going to write 4 books in the next year if you'll fund my Kickstarter, who would believe that was going to happen? I mean, I think that's a really, really smart point.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's definitely one of those. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Okay, so I'll see you in an hour.
Yeah. Right. Well, and George is George, and I think those the first, at least the first 3 Game of Thrones books are some of the absolute most wonderful, positive fantasy novels ever. But I'm just not waiting for the next one anymore, and that's just a problem. And it is a problem for most of us writers, is because, like, I wrote the Spine of the Dragon trilogy, and what happens is, so the first one came out, the next one came out a year later, and the third one came out a year after that, exactly like I promised. But what happens is too many readers have been burned, and so they don't buy book 1 and they don't buy book 2. They wait until all 3 of them are out so they can buy all 3. Well, that's great for the reader, but when you're a publisher going, gee, nobody bought Kevin's book 1, so let's just stop publishing it. So it's a self-fulfilling downward spiral. If you don't buy the first book, then it doesn't do well, and then the publisher doesn't support the rest of the series. And then the author may not finish it because he didn't get any support from the publisher.
It's a tricky spiral. Yeah, definitely.
It's got my name on it. You can count on it. I've never been late on a book, really.
Yeah, definitely. When you starting out in your author career, if you're in the middle of it and you're like, I need to get more sales, I want to change things up, stick to what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to publish every 6 months, make sure that book is out every 6 months. If you say it's going to be once a year, make sure it's every year and you've got that planned, especially for those that are kicking them out every month, every 2-3 months. Make sure you get them out, and that whatever level of publishing you can handle, just make sure you stick to it, because you'll lose readers faster than if you do.
Well, and I'll kind of go back to, it has been 5 years since the last Dan Shamble book, because these are a labor of love and I'm doing them for myself. And so I had other Dune books under contract. I had the Spine of the Dragon things, which I had contractual commitments that I was going to get them done at a certain time. And so, unlike Kalene, I don't work 25 hours a day. I just work 20 hours a day. And so there are other things that had to take priority. And so Dan Shamble just kind of kept getting put back further and further until finally, I think it was last fall, I just went, no, damn it, I'm going to make time. I'm going to just carve it up because I really want to do this. And that's what the Kickstarter is for, to see if there's support, or if I really should just write them myself and put them in a drawer somewhere.
But one of the good things about that, though, with the way that you're doing it, coming back on, publishing, when you say you're going to publish, if you say it's going to be a year, you take 2, it's been 5 years. However, you're taking all of the other ones before and you're giving them a new look. You're republishing. So not only are readers going to get the chance to get this sweet new cover, to get the updated versions, they know based on your other track record, the ones coming after are going to come after. So it's getting this big facelift in a big way. And I think that's a smart way to go about it.
I never actually promised I was going to do another one, so it's not like I broke a promise.
There you go.
But on that, I do have to give kind of props. There's the we can't really show. If you go to the Kickstarter page, I've got all the other covers that are up there. I got a design service that actually Michael Anderley, so you may know Michael Anderley from 20 Books to 50K. He recommended them to me to give a whole new cover art and look to the series. So I hired them. They did a beautiful job for the first one. They did the second one, and they just did the front covers for all of them, and I loved them. And it's the people I'm interacting with. One is named Nadia, and the other is named Tanya, and they're working on this. And I've got now the ebook cover is done, and then you have to turn it into the wrap cover for the trade paperback, and then the whole dust jacket cover for the hardcovers. And I just got all the trade paperbacks done, and we're working on the hardcovers now. Well, they sent a letter saying we may be a little bit slower because we're in Ukraine and we're being bombed right now.
Wow.
That's all the covers. And so I just got from them just before lunch that they sent me the first batch of all of the dust jackets. So they're working. They have to stop when air raids go on. These guys are in Ukraine. They're working on these covers. Can you scroll up and show the double book cover? Because that's the brand new one that they did.
All this beautiful. I was scrolling through. It took me a minute because I had to stop and like stare at this stuff. It's really pretty.
These are that's original cover art that they did, and these guys are working in a war zone.
Yeah.
And so I'm very, and in fact I'm having to do some other like 3D graphics for the box set and everything. I wasn't sure I was going to do that, but I said, at least if I'm paying you, then some money's going into you to help you out on some stuff. So they're doing it.
And we're glad they're safe, and they're doing such beautiful work. This is incredible.
Anyway, I like the whole look of it. So
they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous for sure.
So you and your friend Brandon are definitely showing that Kickstarter is a viable avenue for authors, and maybe there's some authors out there who are taking a second look at it. What would be your top Kickstarter tips to authors? We don't have the base and the background that you and Brandon do have, but we can still use some of the same processes and take some same steps.
Well, I mean, this is my very first one, so I guess we're just kind of proving the concept. Brandon's done a bunch of them. He's made it into an art form, but this is my first one. Dean Wesley Smith was kind of my Obi-Wan on it because he's run several Kickstarters for WMG. I guess one of the things is have realistic goals. I set my goal as less than $30 million, like Brandon did. So I was being much more realistic. Just try to be realistic. Set a goal that you think you're going to meet. Don't get over it. It's great if we funded in 36 minutes. So
wow. I'm gonna give a clap to that. That's awesome.
But I also have a big social media presence. I've got a newsletter. I've got a lot of friends, so I'm able to put a bunch of stuff in there. But also, if you're somebody who's considering supporting Kickstarters, it's just you're helping out artists. It's a direct fan to creator connection. It's not fan to bookstore to distributor to publisher to editor to writer. It's fan to writer, and it's democratizing the whole thing, and that's what indie publishing has done all along. I mean, it's let us do things, but I guess the big warning, you got to, if you get 300 people that want to have signed print copies of your books, do you have the capability to sign and mail out 300 copies of your books? I mean, I actually have staff, and we have a web store, and we mail things out all the time, so we're used to it. Brandon has a whole army of people that are used to doing this. His last Kickstarter was a mere $6 million, so they know what they're doing already. But I'm expecting in the next few months, there's going to be a lot more author Kickstarters, and there's going to be a lot of them that crash and burn because the people didn't really know what they were doing.
Start small.
It takes a while to, if you look at mine, there's a whole bunch of, write-ups and descriptions. I've got a video. I've got artwork. I've got it took me about 30 hours of my time just to write up this Kickstarter thing. It's not just, what the heck, let's put up a Kickstarter.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, for sure.
So again, this is my first one, so I'm not an expert by any case. I mean, we funded, so that means it worked. So
this is going to be a future topic at the Superstars writing seminars. Like, how does
it was last month. We had a couple of our Superstars early attendees have become quite successful at Kickstarters, and they came and gave a workshop, and I sat in on parts of that. And there were some of my helpers too. I wrote to them and said, could you look at mine and make sure I'm not doing anything stupid? And so we'll see.
That's good. Love that community. Yeah, Leo also wants to know if there's a blood ritual required for Kickstarter.
Leo, stop being a troll.
You could try, just like the whole thing with that. So what happens in the Dan Shamble universe, there was an event called the Big Uneasy, when due to a full moon and a rare alignment of planets and an astrological thing, there was a virgin blood sacrifice on the Necronomicon that caused all the monsters to come back. Well, it was a virgin blood sacrifice, but it was actually a 50-year-old librarian who did a paper cut on the book, and she spilled a drop of blood on it, and that's what triggered everything. And so all the vampires and ghosts and mummies and legendary creatures and everything came back. But the conceit is that after all that uproar, all the monsters just kind of want to live their normal lives and do everything. And my character, Dan Shamble, was a private investigator because, werewolves get divorced too. And vampires have estate issues. And there's just all the same legal stuff, but it's with monsters. And then in the first book, he is murdered on a case, and then he comes back from the dead and back on the case as a zombie. And he's now just still being persistent, and his partner is a bleeding heart human lawyer who just wants justice for the monsters because like Dan Shamble finds out that once he comes back as a zombie, his driver's license is expired because he's dead, so he has to go take a driving test again. And
darn it.
So it's all these little things like that. And anyway,
that's a lot of fun.
So there's your blood ritual, Leo.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of questions about Dune that came in ahead of time.
Yeah, so let's talk about Dune. We got 10 minutes.
We've got 10 minutes to talk
10 minutes.
Rick wants to know what you thought of the movie adaptation of it.
Well, I loved it, of course. My name's on the credits. It looks good.
Okay, so loved it, and then they're working on the next movie.
The second half.
You've got some involvement in that too.
Yeah, the same as with the first one, and I'll be, they make up the titles, special consultant or something like that. That just means I do what they ask, and I read the scripts and make comments. Brian Herbert is too, and we have always worked together very closely on all of our Dune stuff. And our previous Dune book called Lady of Caladan came out in October, a few months ago. And our third book in this trilogy is called The Heir of Caladan, not the breathing air, the H-E-I-R of Caladan, comes out this October. And that's the immediate prequel to Dune. It's basically the events right before Dune, when, like, how did the Harkonnens get kicked off of Arrakis, and how did this little House Atreides get given this biggest primo responsibility in the entire Imperium, and all kinds of plots and political machinations and stuff like that. So that's where that. And so basically, the Heir of Caladan will end a couple of pages before Dune starts.
Okay, so the audience that's watching the movies right now, that's what they're going to be really curious about, is how did we get here? So you're giving them that.
Yes.
Nice. Have you seen a bump in sales since the Dune movies came out? Like, is there a resurgence?
Well, I've been watching the bestseller list, and all of Frank Herbert's stuff has just been screaming off the shelves. I mean, the Frank Herbert originals are going like crazy. Our books have been reissued and they're selling up, but to get back to our traditional publishing thing, the time lag is so long that the movie just came out in October. I won't see the royalty statements about those book sales for like another year. So I'm assuming that there will be a pickup in sales, but I haven't cashed the checks yet.
You'll have hindsight on that information.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah. I'm curious with Dune coming out and the Star Wars coming out and Star Trek, all these remakes of those old science fiction storylines that we love so much, if there's like a resurgence of interest in science fiction in general that could be coming in, but it might be too soon to tell.
Well, I don't know if it's a resurgence because with, when Star Wars came out in 77, that did for science fiction what Brandon just did for Kickstarters. I mean, suddenly Star Wars made science fiction cool, big business, big audience. And since Star Wars, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but the last time I looked, it's like 18 of the top 20 grossing movies of all time were science fiction or fantasy movies. Just because that's counting the Marvel movies, which I count as science fiction or fantasy. And there's always been an audience that just, we don't have to hide it anymore. We don't have to hide our comic books behind something. We can read them because they're cool.
Yeah. Okay.
And look, I can even talk to girls now because science fiction is cool. Look at you guys.
See, we like science fiction stuff.
We do. It pays the bills.
It does.
That's a boba head, not a bobblehead.
Yeah. And Dean Floyd had a question that because we're getting close, I really was interested in knowing your opinion on, and something that we've kind of been discussing a little bit throughout the show. So Dean Floyd asks, with all the changes to the industry throughout your career, where do you see the industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? What can we currently apply to our craft to be relevant in the near future?
I think it's going all over the place, and I mean that literally. That back when I was a kid and wanted to be a writer in the 70s, I wanted to be a writer. There was like one path. You wrote short stories, you published them in the science fiction magazines, you got an agent, and then he sent your book to the 12 science fiction publishers. But now there's only 3 or 4 major publishers, and the story magazines are kind of gone, although there's web things, and the magazines are still there. They're just a tenth of their previous circulation or whatever. But it used to be like this one straight and narrow path. And now it's like the Mississippi River Delta, that it's a million different streams. And I know somebody who's killing it by working LinkedIn to sell his books. People are Kickstarter are doing it. Some people do. Just at 20 Books to 50K conference in Las Vegas last November, everybody was just going on and on about book talk and TikTok, and that's the way that their people are doing it. I have so far resisted that just because there's just so many things to do. There are people who kill it on Amazon ads. There are people who kill it on Facebook ads. There are people who do book bubs. There's just all kinds of ways to do it. And you don't have to do all of them. Just find something that works and do your best. And actually, about what other people do, I'm seeing Guy DeMarco posting there. One of my other hats that I wear, lots of different ones. I'm also a professor. I run a whole master's degree program in publishing for Western Colorado University. We have just filled up our year's cohort. In fact, we got a double cohort. I got a second professor. We have twice as many students. So I only started it like 4 years ago. And it's actually, if you go, my website is wordfire.com, and there's a whole section there about the publishing degree. So we're full up for next year. You can apply for the year after that. But I'm doing that so I get to teach stuff, which means that I have to stay on top of things and try to be 10 minutes ahead of what the students are, because some of my students are like full on indie publishers themselves. And although I should point out, ours is one of the only programs that really does embrace indie publishing. A lot of the well-established publishing degree programs are how to get a job as an assistant editor at HarperCollins in Manhattan or something like that. And frankly, that's not the thing that people want most. They they want to know how to do it themselves. They want to know how to design covers and lay out books and market them and things. So I'm just having a great time teaching it. I've always loved to teach and pay it forward. And I'm writing Dan Shamble, and I'm writing Dune, and I'm doing comic books, and I'm working on film and TV stuff. And that's why I work 20 hours a day, because I like it. I mean, I'm sorry, I like it. And
never be sorry for what you enjoy doing, especially when you're giving us juicy things.
Well, and like last night, what we did to relax is we kicked back and we watched the Doctor Strange movie, which I'd seen already, just hadn't seen it in years. So we're watching Doctor Strange. So I'm going, I can call this work. This is cool. And
yeah, you're
writing comics. It's work. So I'm always working.
Do researching, getting ideas.
And for his break, taking time off to talk to us authors out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Well, I'm gonna go back and edit some more of my Dan Shamble chapters, because I got to get this polished up and fulfill my Kickstarter orders. But it'll be April or May. It's just how fast. Well, see, I have to polish it to my satisfaction, and then my wife, Rebecca Mesta, it's never to her satisfaction. So she goes, "Not so fast, mister," and then she has to go and redline the entire thing and polish it all up, and we'll go back through and we'll get it all published. But because it's my publishing house, I control when I get to release it. And so we're going to give the books to the Kickstarter backers like in April or May, as soon as I get it finished. And then it'll be for sale to the general public like in August or September.
And you have another book coming out in April too.
Oh, and this should have been a whole hour. We need to go on again. We'll do this again.
Absolutely.
I wrote these steampunk fantasy novels with my friend Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush. And Neil, we did the first one, Clockwork Angels, based on Rush's very last studio album. And then Neil and I wrote a sequel called Clockwork Lives, which won the Colorado Book Award. And it's my favorite book of all the books that I've written. And then Neil just died 2 years ago of terminal brain cancer. And when he was dying, we plotted out the third one. And it's called Clockwork Destiny. And I had to wait a year after he was gone before I could go back to those notes and look at them. And it's there. And I wrote, and it was a great cathartic experience. It may be my best book. I'm just too close to it right now, but that's there. I'll throw another plug, because we have our own online store. It's called wordfireshop.com. And I've got signed copies of Clockwork Destiny for pre-order, and the Dan Shamble, the old books up there. And if you want autographed copies, it's there. See,
Clockwork Destiny comes out in April. Is that right?
It's actually in June, because their supply chain issues. They couldn't get the neat leatherette for the cover, so they had to bump the release date to June. But it's all written. It's close, and that's a very, very emotional book for me, Clockwork Destiny. So I hope people will check it out. It's not funny like Dan Shamble.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on and chatting with us and sharing your experiences and giving us all the advice and good tidbits. To everyone out there in the live audience, thank you for hanging out with us. We got Corey Gilliam, Patricia Gilliam, Aaron M. Brown, guys out there, Bauhaus Gamer. There's so many people. I saw Vicaro Leo's out there, Jeffrey H. Haskell. Thank you, everybody. Also, definitely check out Kevin's Kickstarter. Check out his website. He's got so much going on. Millions of books being sold, and he ain't even slowing down, man. In fact, I think he is speeding up. I think this Kickstarter is kickstarting a new fire under Kevin.
And I'm not going to get much sleep tonight, because I have to be on another one of these, but in Beijing, China at
oh my goodness,
at 12:30 a.m. So I won't be sleeping. You'll be up, Kalene. So we'll be there.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Alrighty.
I appreciate it.
Everyone out there, thank you for joining us. Be sure to check us out next week. We are still getting our podcastingness back on the roll. We finally got that all figured out, and I need to do some uploads. So with that, be sure to check us out next week. We're going to talk about more reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Mediums, The Writer's Journey. Peace out, you guys.